My name is Claire Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and I live in a quiet suburb outside Denver, Colorado. Most of my life, I believed that family meant safety. I believed that no matter what happened to me, my mother would be the one person standing beside my hospital bed, holding my hand, telling me everything was going to be okay. I was wrong. 3 weeks ago, I was lying in an ICU bed, tubes in my arm, barely able to speak above a whisper. And the first thing my mother said to me, before she even asked how I was feeling, was this: "Claire, honey, we need to talk about the house. Today, if you can. I want to tell you what led to that moment, because what happened next still shocks me, even now. To understand how we got here, you have to understand who I used to be. I was the responsible one, the oldest of 2 daughters. While my younger sister Megan chased one failed business idea after another, I worked 2 jobs through college, saved every spare dollar, and at 28, I finally bought my first home. A small 3-bedroom house on Maple Court, with a crooked porch swing and a garden I planted myself. That house wasn't just wood and brick to me. It was proof. Proof that I had built something real with my own 2 hands, without anyone's help. My mother, Diane, used to visit every Sunday. She'd sit on that porch swing, sip her coffee, and tell the neighbors, "That's my daughter's house. She earned every inch of it." I believe she meant it. 2 years later, I married Daniel. He was a structural engineer, quiet, steady, the kind of man who double-checked the locks at night not out of fear, but out of care. We built a life inside those walls. We hosted Thanksgiving there. We painted the nursery a soft yellow, hoping. For a while, everything felt whole. But looking back now, the cracks had already started to show. I just didn't want to see them. Began with small comments. My mother would say things like, "You know, Megan's struggling again. It's a shame she doesn't have something stable like you do." At first, I thought it was just a mother worrying about her younger daughter. The comments got sharper. "You have so much, Claire. A house, a husband, savings. Megan has nothing. Doesn't that ever bother you?" I wish I noticed the signs earlier. I brushed it off every time, telling myself, she doesn't mean anything by it. She's just protective of Megan. But protection was never the right word for what was coming. One evening, my mother asked, almost casually, "Whose name is actually on the deed to the house? Just yours, or Daniel's too?" I remember pausing. It was such a strange question, but I answered honestly, the house was mine, bought and paid for before the marriage, still solely in my name. She smiled and said, "Good, good. That's smart." At the time, I thought she meant it as a compliment. Now, the first understand she was taking notes. 6 months ago, my health took a turn I never saw coming. A sudden severe infection turned into complications, and within days, I was rushed into intensive care. I remember very little from those first 72 hours. Machines beeping, Daniel's voice somewhere far away, fear pressing down on my chest like a stone. What I do remember, clearly, painfully, is the moment I opened my eyes on day 4, still weak, still hooked to monitors, and saw my mother sitting beside my bed, not crying, not holding my hand. She was holding a folder. "Claire," she said gently, like she was doing me a favor, "I know this isn't the best timing, but we really do need to sort out the house situation. Megan and her kids need somewhere stable. You have Daniel's income now. You don't need it as much as she does." I remember blinking at her, certain I had misheard. Surely my own mother wasn't asking me, in an ICU bed, to sign over my house. But she was. "It's just a formality," she continued. "A quitclaim deed. Takes 5 minutes. You can rest right after." That's when everything changed. That's when I understood. This wasn't a sudden idea born from worry. This had been planned. Waiting for a moment when I would be too weak, too frightened, too exhausted to say no. I want to be honest with you about what that moment felt like, because I think anyone who has ever been betrayed by someone they trusted will understand. It wasn't anger first. It was disbelief. A cold, sinking disbelief that made the beeping monitors around me feel very far away. Then came the hurt, deep physical hurt, like something inside my chest had cracked open. This was my mother, the woman who taught me to ride a bike, who sat beside my bed with a cool cloth every time I had a fever as a child. And now, at the most fragile moment of my adult life, she was holding a legal document instead of my hand. I remember whispering, "Mom, I just got out of surgery," and she said, without missing a beat, I know, sweetheart, that's exactly why we need to do this now, while everyone's already thinking about family and what matters. I turned my face to the wall so she wouldn't see me cry. I felt shattered, not just by what she was asking, but by what it revealed. That somewhere along the way, I had stopped being her daughter and started being an asset. I told her I needed to rest. She left the folder on the bedside table anyway. Just think about it, she said. For Megan. What my mother didn't know was that Daniel had never left my side, not really. He had only stepped out that afternoon to take a phone call in the hallway, a call I wouldn't learn about until later. See, Daniel wasn't just quiet. He was careful. And 2 weeks before my hospitalization, he had noticed something strange. My mother had asked him, out of nowhere, whether hospitals ever required a next of kin signature for financial decisions during emergencies. He hadn't thought much of it then, but when I was rushed into the ICU, that strange question came back to him like a warning bell. So while I was unconscious those first few days, Daniel quietly reached out to a family law attorney. Not because he suspected exactly what would happen, but because something in his gut told him to protect me before I even knew I needed protecting. The attorney's advice was simple: do nothing, sign nothing, and document everything. So when my mother placed that quitclaim deed folder on my bedside table, believing she had caught me at my weakest, she had no idea that Daniel had already spoken to a lawyer. She had no idea that every visit, every comment, every attempt to get me to sign was now being carefully noted down, time-stamped, and prepared as evidence, not out of cruelty, but out of love. Because Daniel knew something my mother never expected, that I was not as alone in that hospital bed as she thought. "She's not getting that house," he said quietly, "but we're not going to scream about it either. We're going to be smart." That was the moment the plan began. Not a plan for revenge in the way you'd imagine. No shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations in a hospital hallway. Daniel's plan was quieter and far more effective. Step 1, we would let my mother believe she still had a chance. We wouldn't confront her immediately. We would let her keep talking, keep pushing, keep revealing exactly how far she was willing to go, all while Daniel's attorney documented every conversation. Step 2, Daniel filed paperwork to formally record my sole, unmistakable ownership of the house, including medical records showing the dates and my cognitive state during each of my mother's visits. Step 3, and the part I didn't expect, Daniel reached out quietly to Megan, not to accuse her, to ask her gently what she actually knew. What Daniel discovered from that phone call with Megan changed everything. Megan hadn't asked our mother to take my house. In fact, Megan had no idea any of this was happening when Daniel explained what our mother had tried to do, pressuring me for a signature while I was in intensive care, using Megan's financial struggles as justification. Megan went silent on the phone for almost a full minute. Then she said, "She told me you offered to help me with a down payment. She said it was your idea." That's when we understood the full shape of what our mother had built. She hadn't just been pressuring me. She had been lying to Megan too, positioning herself as the caring mediator between two daughters when really she was the only one benefiting from the deception. Megan agreed to help. Quietly, she began keeping her own record of every conversation our mother had with her, every guilt-driven phone call, every manipulated version of events. Meanwhile, I was discharged from the hospital, still weak, but determined. Daniel's attorney had finished preparing everything, a full paper trail, witness statements, and clear legal proof that the house was mine and always had been. We didn't say a word to my mother. We simply waited for her to invite herself to Sunday dinner, the way she always did, certain that this time she would finally get what she came for. That Sunday, my mother arrived at our house with the quitclaim deed folder tucked under her arm, exactly like she had at the hospital. She sat down at our dinner table, smiling, acting as if nothing unusual had happened between us. "I brought the paperwork," she said, sliding the folder toward me. "I figured now that you're feeling better, we can finally take care of this." This time, I didn't look away. I didn't shrink into silence like I had in that hospital bed. "Before we talk about paperwork," I said, "I think you should hear what Megan has to say." My mother's smile faltered as Megan walked in from the kitchen, where she had been waiting the entire time. "Mom," Megan said quietly, "I know what you told Claire I needed, and I know what you told me Claire offered. They're not the same story, because neither one is true." The color drained from my mother's face. Then Daniel spoke, calm as ever, and placed a second folder on the table, one prepared by his attorney. Inside were the hospital visitor logs, the timestamps of every visit where she pressured me for a signature, and a formal letter confirming that any attempt to transfer the property without my full documented consent would be treated as an act of undue influence, a matter our attorney was fully prepared to pursue if necessary. "We're not doing this to hurt you," Daniel said. "We're doing this so it never happens again." My mother sat frozen, staring at the folder she couldn't argue with, in a house she had underestimated her own daughter for building. In the weeks that followed, something my mother never expected happened. The truth didn't just protect me. It rippled outward. Megan, for the first time, saw clearly how our mother had used both of us against each other, manipulating one daughter's guilt and the other's fear to try to gain something neither of us had ever agreed to give. Instead of driving a wedge between us, the truth brought Megan and me closer than we had been in years. My mother, faced with clear documentation and the quiet, unshakable resolve of a son-in-law she had underestimated, backed down completely. She never raised the subject of the house again. The relationship between us changed. No dramatic explosion, no public scene, just a long cold silence followed by a far more careful, far more honest kind of distance. She lost something that day, even if no court ever had to decide it. She lost the version of her daughter who would give up everything just to keep the peace. She lost the ability to use my love as leverage. And I gained something I hadn't expected either, the full, undeniable knowledge that the people who truly love you protect you when you're too weak to protect yourself. Daniel never once raised his voice through any of this. He simply made sure that when I needed someone in my corner, someone already was. Looking back now, I think about that moment in the ICU more than I'd like to admit. The folder on the bedside table, the quiet expectation that I would be too tired, too grateful just to be alive to say no. But here's what I've learned. Love should never come with a signature required, and family should never mean surrendering the things you built with your own hands, simply because someone else believes they deserve them more. What saved me wasn't anger, and it wasn't revenge in the way people usually imagine it. It was quiet preparation. It was a husband who paid attention when something felt wrong, even before he understood why. It was a sister who chose truth over comfort, and it was finally my own voice returning the moment I decided I was done being silent. If you're listening to this and you've ever felt pressured to give up something you worked for, just to keep peace with someone who claims to love you, I hope this story reminds you of something important. You are allowed to protect what's yours, even from family, especially from family. Because the people who truly love you will never ask you to sign away your life to prove it.